Hi, my name is Jake, and I am a bookish drummer. So for this video, I have very exciting news. I'm bringing you guys a brand new book tag. I'm going to be calling this tag the Bookish Drummer Tag, and for anyone who's new here, I'm Jake, and my bookish channel is the Bookish Drummer. I started this channel to highlight my two favorite hobbies in the world, which is reading and drumming. So I figured for my very first book tag that I create, why not make it all about drumming? So there's 15 prompts here, and they all deal with various drum and percussion lingo, and just music in general. I am very excited, but enough of the preamble. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. Also, I've got my drum pad and my drumsticks here in case I need to explain anything. The first prompt is drum roll. Name a book with an incredible build-up. And for me, I'm going to go with The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. I love Stormlight, and The Way of Kings is actually my second favorite novel of all time. It does start off a little slow. It does start off interestingly, but it's definitely got a slow start to it. But man, the build-up to this 1,200-page brick of a book is incredibly worth it, and the ending is incredible, and it's such a good build-up to an incredible ending. And prompt number 2 is Downbeat, which Downbeat is literally just 1, 2, 3, 4. And for this prompt, name a book that made you sad or depressed. And for me, I'm going to have to go with The Push by Ashley Audrain. This book has a scene about halfway through it that really hits hard, that's really disturbing. And there's a couple lines after that scene, or a couple chapters after that scene that just really tore into my soul. It was just very soul-crushing. And after this book, I needed like a pick-me-up book to like make myself feel better about reading this book. It was a great book. It's just very depressing. So prompt number 3 is Upbeat, which is a little different than Downbeat. If Downbeat is 1, 2, 3, 4, then the Upbeat comes right after that. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And for this prompt, it's pretty simple. Name a book that made you happy. And for me, a book that I read earlier this year that I couldn't read this book without having a smile on my face was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book just almost felt like it was written specifically for me because this book deals a lot with classic rock and just band drama. And Taylor Jenkins Reid is just an amazing author because she has the unique ability to make you laugh, to make you think, and she can write very good emotional scenes. And so she's just an amazing writer, and this is a top 5 book for me all time, and it makes me very happy. And prompt number 4 is Offbeat, which you don't typically want to be offbeat when you're a drummer because you want to just stay in rhythm. But for the purposes of this prompt, name a book that felt very unique to you. And I read a book pretty recently by a new favorite author of mine, The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. This is a very interesting horror novel. It's more of a literary horror novel in that he's mainly focusing on characters and themes rather than kind of the scary stuff that typically horror writers want to delve into. But this book, man, was just very intriguing. I haven't really read a book quite like it, and Stephen Graham Jones is quickly turning into one of my all-time favorite horror writers. There's a scene like halfway through this book that's just bonkers. And of course, the ending, I've never read an ending like this. So this is one of the most unique books I have ever read. And prompt number 5 is Crescendo, which basically means to get louder. But for this prompt, name a book that just got better and better as you read it. And for me, that would be Senlin Ascends by Josiah Bancroft. And this is not an unpopular opinion. Many people who read this book, it kind of starts out and maybe they're not in love with it right away, but you get further into the book as Senlin ascends the tower looking for his lost wife, and you fall more in love with Senlin, and you get more used to the writing style, and really by the time you get to the end, you just realize that it's such a terrific book. So it really does get better and better the further you get into it. And for prompt 6, it's the opposite, Decrescendo, which basically means to get softer. So for this prompt, name a book that got worse and worse as you read it, which I do have an answer, but it's not like it was a complete drop-off for me. That would be The Burning God by R.F. Kuang. This is the final book in the Poppy War trilogy, and I loved the first 2 books. And to be fair, I loved most of this book, so it's not like it dove off a cliff or anything for me. But the last few chapters and the very ending of the book, I still think about to this day, and I wished it was different. It makes somewhat sense, but I kind of wish the ending was different. So it does decrescendo for me in that sense. And prompt number 7 is drag, which basically just is a little roll. And for this prompt, name a book that just dragged on, or that you couldn't get into, or maybe you even DNFed. And for me, a recent DNF is Valor by John Gwynne. This is the second book in the Faithful and the Fallen series. I read Malice back in July, and I liked it, but I didn't love it. And I went into Valor expecting to love it because a lot of people say that the second book jumps in quality from the first book. But I got almost halfway through it, and I just wasn't having that feeling like a lot of people did. So I DNF'd it. It's not a permanent DNF. I'll probably come back to it maybe sometime next year. I don't know. I bought the whole box set, so I'm going to try to read them all. But yeah, this book did kind of drag on for me. And prompt number 8 is ghost note, which is a very interesting term. It basically means a note that you feel rather than hear. I'll give you an example. So something like... So very fittingly for prompt 8 for ghost note, best horror or thriller novel you've read. And for me, I gotta go with my favorite horror novel of all time, and that would be Misery by Stephen King. Even though this is my favorite horror novel, it's my second favorite Stephen King novel of all time. My number 1 being The Dead Zone, which I don't really consider horror. But anyway, Misery is definitely the scariest book I've ever read, especially when I would read this book. I'd try to put myself into the main character's situation, and just thinking about what that would be like and what that would feel like just terrifies me. So yeah, this is definitely my favorite horror novel of all time. So prompt number 9 is Flam'boyant, and a flam in percussion lingo is basically where you put a little note before a big note to kind of give it more oomph. So I'll give you an example. But for the purposes of BookTube, Flam'boyant, name a book with a pretty cover. And for me, probably the best cover that I own, I love this cover, is Winds of Strife by U.G. Gutman. And this is a really good indie published fantasy debut that's really, it's very good. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but it's very good. But for me, like, one of my favorite aspects of this book is just the cover. Like, it's so stunning. I love the blue and the white and the black. It's so stunning. But the book is good. The book is good too. But, you know, it's definitely the best cover that I own. And prompt number 10 is resonance. And resonance just means like the sound that a drum gives off. Sometimes you hit a drum, like a snare drum, and it's just a quick snap sound. Other times you can hit like a timpani and it has this really big ring sound to it. But for prompt 10, resonance, name a book that resonated with you. So of course, this being the Bookish Drummer Tag, there's not a better book than Drums, Girls, and Dangerous Pie, which is a middle grade book that I read in middle school. And I've actually read it at different stages of my life. So I've read it in middle school, high school, college, after college. I think I've read this book like 5 times, and it's meant something different to me every time that I've read it. And it resonates well with me. I couldn't well make the Bookish Drummer book tag and not include this book, right? So prompt number 11 is in the pocket. And what that means is basically that the drummer is right on time. They're not slowing down, they're not speeding up, they're just right on time. They're in the pocket. So for the prompt in the pocket, name a book that was extremely well paced. And for me, one of the best paced books that I've ever read is a recent read for me, and that would be Vicious by V.E. Schwab. I read most of this book in like a 7-hour period, and it's not too lengthy, but like this book is just incredibly well paced. I could not put this book down. Super fast, super quick, straight to the point, and very efficient, but also just extremely well written and so entertaining. And this book definitely stayed in the pocket. And prompt number 12 is drum solo. That's pretty self-explanatory. But for the purposes of this tag, drum solo, name your favorite fantasy or sci-fi standalone. And one of my favorite fantasy standalones by one of my favorite authors is Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. Recently, this book has gotten a lot of hate. A lot of people don't like this book. And to be fair, it's probably not the most well-written. It doesn't have the best characters, right? But it's his debut novel, so it's not like your debut novel is going to be spectacular. But still, I loved this book anyway. I thought it moved very well. The plot was very interesting. I liked the characters. And honestly, this is one of the best books that Sanderson's written, in my humble opinion. But a lot of people don't like it. But I just think it's a very good standalone book. And prompt number 13 is drum battle, also self-explanatory. But for this tag, drum battle, name a fantasy book or sci-fi book really with a great battle scene or great battle scenes. And for me, this might be a weird pick, but I'm going to go with The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. It's probably not the best, military strategy book. I'm sure something like Malazan, Book of the Fallen, or Faithful in the Fallen. A lot of Fallens, which makes sense because it's a battle. what are you doing, Jake? But for me, the violence in this book and the battles that are in here, I really appreciate, because R.F. Kuang definitely doesn't stray away from the horrors of war and how realistic and deadly and just devastating war can be. She doesn't glorify war at all, and I really appreciate that. You know, because in fantasy books, a lot of times it can be like, oh, we're going to battle, and they make it seem like it's a fun thing, when in reality, it would suck. So yeah, Poppy War battles, they are disturbing, but, you know, they're realistic. Prompt 14 is buzzworthy, and basically a buzz roll is just when you press down on the stick and it makes a buzz, so something like. So for this prompt, buzzworthy, name a buzzworthy book that you're interested in reading. And for me, I've heard many great things from many great booktubers about Ninth Reign and this whole trilogy. It sounds really off the wall and just a very unique fantasy trilogy that I'm very interested in, and I want to get to it sometime this year, probably in November maybe, because I'm reading a lot of fantasy in November. So yeah, I'm very interested in reading this buzzworthy book. And the last prompt is not a question, it's just jam session. So let's start a band. Yeah! So this last little part of the tag I think will be very fun. Basically there's two parts. I'm going to tag some people, and then I'm going to create a hypothetical booktube band, which is kind of funny because a lot of booktubers that I talk to don't really play any instruments, but it'll be fun nonetheless. So the first person that I'm going to tag is Joanna from the booktube channel Joanna, and for my hypothetical band, she will be my lead singer, because in real life she teaches singing, so that fits perfectly. The second person I'm going to tag is Andrew from the channel Andrew's Wizardly Reads. I'm pretty sure he doesn't play any instruments, but since he's a wizard, he can probably magically just play any instrument he wants to, so I want to see him rock it out on the keyboards. And the third person I'm going to tag is Leslie from The Nerdy Narrative. I'm pretty sure she doesn't play any instruments. I'm not sure. But for the purposes of this hypothetical band, she's going to be shredding it on lead guitar. And last but not least, the fourth person I'm going to tag is Evie from She Was Only Evie. And she's going to be our secret weapon. She's going to play the bass guitar. And I know in real life, Evie, you know how to play the flute, or you played the flute when you were younger. You can do that if you want, but bass guitar is cooler. So yeah, all of you guys are officially tagged, and I am now eagerly awaiting your answers for all of these questions and to see what kind of hypothetical booktube bands you guys come up with. Hopefully this turns out to be a lot of fun. And also, for anyone that I didn't tag here, if you watch this and you're very eager to go ahead and film your own video, please feel free to do so. Consider yourself tagged as well. And in the comments down below, please let me know what you guys thought of this video, what you thought of the questions, and what you thought of my answers, what your answers would be for any of these prompts. Let me know all of that down in the comments below. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching, and have a terrific day.